Understanding Cisco IOS. iOS for Cisco switches. Hi, this is Joe, and we're back with another module on iOS, and iOS in specific for your switch. We're gonna kind of focus on switches for the immediate few lessons. And if you can hear in the background, I've got my switch sitting next to me and it's running and it's kind of making a little bit of noise there. But I want you to kind of get an idea of why these switches actually sit in a telco room or in some other room, because they have these big fans that really blow a lot of air through them to keep them cool. But I've got my switch sitting here, and I want to use it so we can go over a lot of the lessons that we're going to have today. So what we're going to go over today is we're going to talk about what is an iOS image. And iOS here stands for Internet Network Operating System, the Cisco IOS. That term gets thrown around quite a bit, but what does it actually stand for? Us and our acronyms. Then we're going to go talk about the help system that comes with your iOS, and then we'll talk about the different modes of the iOS when you're configuring your switch, or when you're actually looking at your switch or using your switch. So with that said, what is an iOS? Well, the iOS is the Internet Network Operating System. Wait a minute. Oh, these two are the same. Okay. So anyway, the iOS is a command line configuration, it's a command line configuration tool for your Cisco switches or any Cisco device. It's not only for configuration, though. It also allows you to look at the statistics, what's going on. You can look at your traffic. You can do so much with the iOS. It's been around for a long time and really has become the standard operating system. Other manufacturers, if you ever look at say for example, a Foundry router or switch, the command line interface is almost identical to a Cisco iOS command line, Cisco iOS commands. The Foundry OS is so much, and the industry in itself, Cisco has become such a leader with their iOS system, their iOS operating system, that other vendors have copied it, mimicked it, because what Cisco has done really, really good is to be able to produce an operating system, and the engineers who use it have been trained so well that if another vendor comes along with their own product, well, the best way for them to leverage the existing talent that's out there, engineering talent that's out there, is to give them a familiar interface. So what they do is they duplicate or they replicate that same command line feel that Cisco has so lovingly produced. And really they've done it and I'm not being facetious in any way. I mean, it is, anybody, you give anybody the Cisco command line that's been on an operating system, the Cisco iOS, they'll be able to get around, and you can get around on all the Cisco devices. It's very consistent between all the devices, and it's very powerful, and it's very fast. Some would argue that last statement. Some would argue to say, well, it's not powerful, it's not fast, it's bloated code. I've heard a lot of those same terms. It just depends on what you think. Without argument, though, Cisco is the leader. And if you're doing any kind of networking, you cannot be a network engineer without knowing the Cisco iOS. I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. You can learn Extreme switches, you can learn Foundry switches, Juniper routers, you can learn them all, but without Cisco, you're not going to be able to find good work anywhere. So when you first get your switch, and you got to configure it. You notice you hear in the background. I'm kind of talking over this. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a console cable. Now every switch comes with a console cable, and it's this light blue, has a DB9 on one end and RJ45 on the other. And this console cable will plug into the back of your switch The RJ45 plugs into the back of the console port on the back of your switch, and then you take the DB9 and plug it in the back of your desktop. Now, one thing that's been happening recently is, especially with laptops and even a lot of desktops, you don't have this DB9 connector anymore, this console connector. It's going away. The industry is phasing it out, and they're replacing it with USB ports. Now, luckily, what we have is we have these USB to DB9 serial adapters that you can buy. You can pick them up. Really, you can get them online. You can pick them up at Newegg online, or at CompUSA, Fry's, or any of those places. You can also buy them. And if you don't have a serial connection on your laptop or desktop, you're going to need one of these USB to serial adapters. So you get one of these, you plug the USB into your laptop or your desktop, then you connect this DB9 to this DB9 that then connects to the back of your switch. And that way you can get connected. One of the issues I have seen with some of these USB to DB serial adapters is that they all come they come with software drivers you actually have to load. Windows especially doesn't natively recognize what these devices are, so you'll have to. They all come with the disk. You load the disk on your laptop, and then it'll get loaded and it'll be fine. But in the meantime, you can't just like find one of these cables laying around and plug it in and hope it'll work. You still need the driver, so just kind of be wary of that. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need a terminal program. Now, Windows 7, I noticed, doesn't come with Hyperterm like it used to, and really that's not such a bad thing, because Hyperterm was a horrible application, terminal program. I know back in the old days with Windows 98, Windows 95, Windows XP, God forbid Windows Millennium, and Windows Vista, they all came with Hyperterm. And Hyperterm did the job. If you didn't have any terminal program at all, sure, you could use Hyperterm, but man, it was buggy. It would get you by. But there are some other free. TerraTerm is a great free terminal program. So is Putty. Putty is great, especially if you want to do SSH. Now, both TerraTerm and Putty will do Telnet, and they'll do SSH, and they'll do serial connections. TerraTerm, I like TerraTerm. It's free and it's really handy. Secure CRT is another. It's made by Van Dyke. And one thing about Secure CRT is that it is the only terminal program that you can use. Say if you do work your way up, you get your CCENT, your CCNA, your CCNP, and then you go for your CCIE. In the CCIE lab, Secure CRT is the only application that you get to use when you're in the CCIE lab. So if you can get your hands on Secure CRT, in the long run, it'll help you, because that's the application that you'll get to use when you're at the IE lab. So you may want to get familiar with how to use that application. But for the most part, with what we're doing, TerraTerm and Putty will work really good. Now, what I'm going to use, I'm going to be using TerraTerm. And today we're going to get our hands dirty finally, and we're going to get on a switch, which is why you hear that switch in the background. We're going to get on our switch, and we're going to see what it's like to actually pull up a command prompt with a console. So the first thing we do is we go out, we're going to do a Google, and you're going to find TerraTerm. And TerraTerm used to be owned by a Japanese company, a Japanese developer who sold it to, what is the company? It begins with a Asaya or a Sarah or something like that. I can't remember. Do a Google. It's also on download.com. You can find it, and you can download it, or you can find Putty and you can download it. When you download it and install it, there isn't really much to it to download, and this is what it looks like on my Windows system. Sorry. You can either connect by TCP/IP, which would be a virtual terminal, or your Telnet, or we're going to go over serial. What we're concerned with is our serial connection, because we're going to do we want to console into our switch. Most computers, when you console in, remember back here, when you console in, your serial port was COM1, was your COM1. Now, with my desktop that I'm using, I don't have a DB9, I have USB, and so I plugged my USB. This is a picture of what my USB connector looks like. When I plugged it into my USB port, depending on the USB port, which port you plug into will depend on what COM port it shows up as. So you may want to go to your device manager, and you can find what COM port the driver, what COM port your serial connection is now associated with. On this example, I am on COM 4, and I'll show you that here. I'll fire up TerraTerm, and you'll see that. The other thing that you want to notice is the communication settings for your serial interface. For Cisco devices, the default is 96, the baud rate of 96. Your data bits are going to be 8 data bits. Your parity is none or no, depending on what your application is that you're using. Stop bits is 1 and flow control is none. And in here in TerraTerm, this is what it looks like in TerraTerm. So I'm using my COM port. Here is COM port 1. When we move on, you'll see that I'll be using COM port 4. 9600 baud, 8 data bits, no parity or a parity of none, 1 stop bit, and no flow control or flow control of none. And we just say OK. So with that, let's pull up our TerraTerm. So here we are. So this is my TerraTerm right here. And if you notice up at the top, I'm connected already. I'm on COM 4. So I can do my setup here, set up my terminal. Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Set up my where is it? See, I've already done this before. Okay, so here's my COM 4. I know I want to be on COM 4. When I initially configured this, you saw the screenshot, and I took that from the other screenshot. So anyway, when you connect your console to your switch, really you get everything connected, and you just hit enter, and you're on the switch. And that's all there is to it, really. It's very simple. You should see this. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to look at, we don't know what we're looking at, right? We've never been on a switch before. So Cisco IOS comes with a very handy help feature. And to access that help feature, we just use ? And there's all the commands that we can use on our switch. Now, one thing I want to point out is you notice up here at the top, see up here we have this greater than symbol. This greater than symbol shows that we are in user mode, and this kind of gets into the different modes of the Cisco IOS that you can work in. But I just wanted you to kind of notice that we are in user mode for now. So I hit ? and it brings up all the commands that I can do in user mode. And you notice here one of the commands that we use a lot is the show command. So we also see this more tag down here, this more. Now what I can do is if I hit enter, I can go one line at a time. Oh, let's do this again. Hit ? Now if I hit spacebar, it'll do one page at a time. Now in user mode, we don't have a whole lot of commands that we can execute. So user mode is kind of a limited administrative function where we just only have a limited number of things that we can do. We can do a show, run. Oh, I can't do show run, can I? Show ? What can I do? I can do a show sessions, show port, show host, show flash. There isn't very much I can do. I can do show VLAN, show users. But notice how I'm using my ? as I get around. So the next mode I want to show you is the enable mode, or the exec privilege mode, or privileged user mode. And we get into enable mode by just typing the word enable. Now, another way with the Cisco I'm going to be going back and forth between Cisco help and the Cisco modes, because I want you to see the help system in use as we use this, but I also want to jump around from mode to mode too. So I hope that's not too confusing with you. But with the Cisco help system, with the help system in Cisco is really great because I can do enable ? and it'll tell me all the commands that I can use that begin with EN. Now if I just did E ? I can do enable and exit So the question mark can be used anywhere along the line. Say I'm like, oh, what is that command to get me into exec mode? Is it exec? Is it enable? I can't remember. I can just type the letter E and hit question mark, and it'll show me, oh, enable. Enable is what I wanted, so I can type enable. But look at see enable, and I'm like, oh wait, oh my goodness, what's going on? That's not what I wanted. I wanted, oh well, I can't type. That's what's the problem. And that's not a command. So what I want is I can do en. If I forget how to spell something, I can hit tab. Tab will complete it for me. Will complete the command for me, and I can go enable mode. So once I hit enter, notice notice this prompt changes. It went from a greater than sign to a pound sign. So the pound sign shows that I'm in enable mode. And now I can enter a question mark again. I can hit enter to go line by line, or I can hit the space bar. Notice, whoa, we got a lot more commands that we can enter, don't we? So we have the show command, question mark. Now all of a sudden, look, I can do show VLAN, show, you know what, I don't have a show run. That's interesting. Let me get out of this. Show running config. There it is. Show running config. Show run, and if I hit the tab, running config. And it builds the configuration and it displays it for us. And there's our running config. And there we are. So we have our enable mode, which is the you can consider executive privilege, kind of, fancy executive privilege. Enable is what enables us to. It's basically a different level of administrative function. So we're now basically God mode, or in Unix or Linux, it would be, you could consider that as being root. But this is our enable mode, and you can see we can do a lot more commands. But all we can do at this point is we can just see things that are going on. We can't actually change the configuration of the switch. To configure our switch, we actually have to go into the configuration mode. And we go into configuration mode by typing configure. And if I do a question mark, here are some different types of ways that we can configure. We can do configure from memory, configure over the network, configure terminal, or just configure. Now, configure terminal is what we want, and that's the most common, because right now what we're on is we're on the terminal. We're on the console, or we're on the terminal. And so if I can just hit T, or I can hit terminal, and then I hit enter, and notice again our prompt has changed again. See, look at this. You can see in parenthesis is now config in parenthesis. Okay? But we still have this pound sign to let us know we're still in a raised administrative privilege. We're enable mode, but configuration. Now, if we hit question mark again, these are the things that I can configure. I can configure. I don't know if you saw this way back. Look at this. Look at one of my things I can configure. Enable. I can configure the enable password. Isn't that cool? So I can set the enable password. So if I do enable secret, enable question mark. We can do last resort, password, secret, or we can use TACACS. And TACACS is a central user database for authenticating users to your switches. So we could do enable secret question mark, and I'm just going to put a password, enable secret. If I don't specify it, see, I can either have an unencrypted password or an encrypted password that will follow. If I type 5 and I type a password in, then I'm telling the system, hey, this is a password that's already been encrypted. if I don't do anything, I could say 0, or by default I could just say password, and my enable secret password is now password. So if I can end, if I exit one more time, there's my switch. Now if I do enable, it's asking me for a password. Now that password is the word password. See how that works? Now let's do a show run. And look at this. It's already encrypted. How is that? Notice this here, enable secret. And this 5, that means that this 5 is showing that it's a encrypted password. This enable secret. Let's go back to configuration mode. Config. Remember, config, we can shorten things also. We can just say config, or I hit tab and I can do configure. Configure T. So now we're back in our config, and we can type question mark again. Now remember enable. Remember, I don't know if you noticed this, but if we go enable question mark, remember we had enable secret and enable password. So if we do password, well, that's another password, isn't it? That's interesting. So let's do another password. Password. Ah, see, it's the same as my enable. It's not recommended. So this is more along the type of help that Cisco gives you to tell you when maybe you've done something wrong, or you've entered the wrong command. Let me think of something else here. Let's see. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show you here is when we're configuring our switch, if you do config T, this is the global configuration mode. That's our third mode, right? Is configured. It's global configuration mode. And the reason I say it's global configuration mode is because we can actually configure interfaces. So if I back out, I typed exit to back out, and if I do a show run to look at our config, now here's an interface. Config T. I can go into an interface level configuration. So I type INT and I hit tab, gives me interface, and these are the interfaces that I can configure. So I want to configure a fast Ethernet interface 01. Notice the prompt here has changed. Now it's config if, meaning config interface. I'm now configuring the interface. I type a question mark, and these are all the commands that I can use for that interface. So if I wanted to, I could say I could set the duplex for this interface, and I hit question mark, duplex auto, duplex full, or duplex half. If I say auto, there's duplex auto. Now the auto negotiation for duplex is that's the default. So if I were to back out, I hit Control Z. That's another shortcut, by the way. Control Z. If you're deep down configuring, like I am in global configuration mode, then interface configuration mode, and instead of each time I'm in one of these configuration modes, I can back out. I just type exit. I'm back out one level. So I was in interface configuration mode. I type exit. It backs me out to global configuration mode. Type exit again. It backs me out to enable mode. Type it again, and I'm back out to user mode. Or really, it logs me out. So I have to go enable. My password is the whole secure password. Config T, interface, tab, and what I'm doing is I type the first couple of letters, I hit tab, it'll complete it for me. Honestly, I don't even have to do that. I could just say int F01, and I'm in the interface fast Ethernet 01 interface. Now what I wanted to show you real quick, Control Z backs me all the way out, and what I wanted to show you, if I do a show run, notice here I typed in duplex auto, but it doesn't show up here. That's because it's the default. There are a lot of defaults that are set automatically, so to speak, but they won't be displayed. You won't see them. So you have to kind of get familiar with some of the defaults because they don't always show up here. But if I do a config T, go into interface fast Ethernet 01, and then say I want to do duplex. Oh no, let's do that. Duplex full. Wait a minute here. So here's another part of the Cisco help system in action. Invalid input detected at marker caret. So this caret marker here is saying, wait, DUI? I don't know a DUI command. Well, it's just showing you that you misspelled it. And what I did here, real quick, notice how if I do an up arrow will retrieve the last command that I entered. And the last command was that duplex. What I want to do is just I'm using my arrow keys to navigate is what I'm doing. So I'm left arrow key, right arrow key, up, down. So if I do up and I just do left arrow key and then I hit a backspace, will let me remove that command, and then I could just hit enter. So duplex full. And you're going to get used to a lot of these different commands as you work with your switches and your routers. Now if I do my Control Z, remember my Control Z will back me out, or I can do exit, exit, and then my show run. There's my duplex full. So notice, since I'm not, the duplex full isn't a default command, it's showing up now in my configuration. Now, another thing, I'm noticing. See, a lot of these little shortcuts, I do just automatically. I'm just used to it, but I'm trying to catch myself to kind of show you what's going on. Notice what I did there. I did a show run. I can hit enter to go one line at a time, and then to get completely out of this, I hit Q to quit. Just Q to quit, and it takes me out of that more, because the more was there, and I could hit space to go page at a time. Well, you don't have to go through the whole thing. You could just hit Q right where you're at, and it'll dump you out right where you are, so you can kind of see where you're at. I need to go back into configuration, global configuration, config T, configure terminal, interface, fast E, I'm hitting tab, 0/1, and now what I want to do is I want to do my duplex auto. That will put me back to the default, because all the interfaces are by default on auto. Control Z is my little shortcut that will get me all the way back out, and if I do my show run, you'll notice up here, look, it's gone again, and we're back to the way it was by default. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you real quick in our shortcuts in our help is if I'm configuring something. Say I want to configure interface fast Ethernet 0/1, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, was it interface 0/1? What did I want to do? If you do Control A will take you to the beginning of your line. Remember, Control A. Think of the ABCs. A is at the beginning. Do Control A will take you to the beginning. Control E for end will take you to the end. Control A is at the beginning of the alphabet. Can look at it that way. And E for end, Control end. So if I mistyped something, and say I'd mistyped interface and I wanted to go back to the beginning, it's just a lot easier to just do Control A and you're at the beginning, Control E, you're at the end. Another little shortcut. So there we have it. We've gotten into our switch. We went over the Cisco help system, where we're using the question mark for all of our help, and you can use question mark every step of the way, so you can see the different types of commands that are available to you at each of the different types of modes that you're in when you're in your Cisco switch. I can use my up arrow for a last command. I can use my down arrow for the next command. There's different shortcuts we can use. We can do the Control Z, which will back us all the way out of our configuration wherever we are. We can use Tab to complete our words. There's a lot of different things that we can do while we're in our switches. And the Cisco Help System will show us, remember, if we enter something in that's not right, if it doesn't know it, it'll put a little up arrow or a caret to kind of say, hey, I don't understand this right here at this letter. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't have a command. And so you know, oh, maybe I mistyped something. So that's a real good part of the Cisco Help System. We also went over today the different modes of the Cisco switch. You have the user mode that started with the greater than sign. We have our privileged mode or our enable mode, and that's represented by a pound sign. Then we went into our global configuration mode that was represented by, in parenthesis, config. And we saw that we were in our config mode, global config mode. Then we also drilled down into interface configuration mode. Now, interface configuration mode, just so you know, I don't believe that's on the CCENT test, but you do want to know that you have these different modes within your switch when you're configuring it. So that wraps it up for today. We went over a lot of stuff, and we actually started finally getting our hands dirty with our getting into a Cisco switch and what it was like. We learned what IOS stands for Internet Network Operating System. Showed you where to go for help, the question mark, and that you can enter even a letter and followed by a question mark will give you some help along the way, show you the commands that you can use. And then we went over all the different modes that are possible within the Cisco IOS. We have the user mode, enable mode, and global configuration mode. I hope this has been helpful to you, and in the next module we're going to go dig even deeper and we're going to configure our first Cisco switch. I hope this is great for you. I had a good time making it, and I'll talk to you next time.